Let's solve homework exercise number 11 from section 3.3. We have not Q and P or Q and P. So order of logical operations, we're going to do the negation of Q first step, so that's why we have a column 3. Then we'll do inside this parentheses negation of Q and P, step number 2. Step number 3 is the other parentheses, Q and P, and then finally the entire statement with the disjunction of column 4 and column 5. Okay, so that's how we do that's why we're doing our columns as they are. The first step is negation of Q, inside parentheses, and then the or. Okay, so begin in column row 1, P and Q are true, so negation of true is a false statement. So negation of Q we just found is false. False and P is true is a false statement, right? It's only true when both are true. And Q and P are both true, right? So this is a true statement. So now what we have, not Q and P, false from column 4, or Q and P is true from column 5. False or true is actually for a disjunction. If one of them is a true, then the truth value of the disjunction is true. Okay? So there's our 4 answers for those, for row number 1. False, that was false, that was actually true, and the disjunction was true. All right, let's look at row 2. Now P is true and Q is false, right? So the negation of Q, the negation of false is true. Negation of Q we just said is true. True and true, P is true, is a true statement. Q and P are true and false. True and false is a false statement because a conjunction is only true when both are true. Now negation of Q or P from column 4 we just found out is true, or Q and P from column 5 we just got as false. This is a disjunction, true or false. Truth value is true because for a disjunction, if one of the parts is true, then it's true. All right, so there's our 4 answers for row 2. True, that was false, and this ended up being true. All right, row number 3, we begin with P is false, Q is true. So negation of Q, true is false. Negation of Q is false, and P, which is false, 2 falses is a false. Q and P, Q is false. Oh, sorry, Q is true, right? Q is true and P is false. True and false is false. For a conjunction, both must be true in order to be true. Then negation of Q and P, we just found out from column 4, is false, or Q and P is false. False or false is a truth value of false. Okay? So on this row, all 4 answers ended up being false. All right, and now in row 4, both P and Q have truth values false, right? There they are. So the negation of a false is going to be true for not Q. Not Q we just said is true, and P, which is false. True and false is a false statement. Conjunctions only true when both are true. Q and P are both false. That's definitely a false statement. So negation of Q and P is false from what we just did in column 4. Q and P from in column 5 is false. False or false is a false statement. Okay, so the negation of Q is true, but the remainder of the statements end up being false. All right, very good. Homework exercise number 12. Determine the truth value. The statement below, when P is false, Q is false when R is true. Now, here, fortunately, we don't have to do a truth table because we can just substitute in these values that are given. So P is substitute in false, and then copy the rest. A disjunction, parentheses, Q is false, and R is true, okay? And then see, you can just evaluate it. So remember, order of logical operations inside the parentheses first. So false and true is a false statement, right? A conjunction is false when one of them or both are false. And then we bring down the or, false or false, the truth value of a disjunction when both are false. So finally, we get the truth value of the entire statement is false after we do all the operations, okay? So you can just substitute in and you can get your answer. So you don't have to do the truth table because you're really just doing one line of a truth table. Okay, same thing for number 13, substitute in values. P is false, Q is false, R is true. So negation of P, which is false. We have the and, parentheses, Q is false, or negation of R, which is true. Okay? So logical operations, do the negations first. Negation of this false is going to be true, and the negation of this true is going to be false. Okay? Now inside the parentheses, false or false is actually a false statement, right? Bring down the true and the disjunction, or the conjunction. True and false is a false statement because the conjunction is only true when both are true. So the final answer for the entire statement after doing all the operations is going to be false after our last step. All right, number 14, again, we can substitute in values because P is given to be false, Q is true, and R is true. So we got P is false, or the negation's out in front, right? Negation of the quantity, Q is true, we have an and R is true, okay? Now, the negations outside of the parentheses, so you do inside the parentheses first. So you just bring down the false or the disjunction. True and true is a true statement. Inside parentheses first. Now we're going to do the negation. So the negation of a true is false. So we get false or false, which makes it a false statement. So the entire statement is false after we do all of the operations. All right, number 15. We got, again, P is false, Q is true, R is true. We can substitute in. We've got the negation. P is false. We've got a conjunction. Q is true. Another conjunction. A negation out in front, the parentheses. P is false, or R is true. Okay, so now where are we at? We've got to do inside the parentheses first. So right here inside these parentheses, false and true statement, a disjunction or conjunction is true and only both are true. So this is false. We still bring down the negation. We have the conjunction, false or true inside these parentheses. The disjunction is actually true when one is true. It's only false when both are false. So we got that. Now our next operation is do the negations. The negation of a false statement makes it true. Copy down the conjunction. The negation of a true statement makes it false. Finally, true and false for a disjunction is false. Okay, so finally, doing all the different operations, we end up with the statement being false. And number 16, one more time, we can substitute because we got truth values. So we have, in parentheses, the negation of P, which is given to be false, and Q, which is true, or, parentheses, negation of R, which is false, and P, which is false. Okay? So right here inside the parentheses, we're going to do the negation first. Negation of a false is true. So true and true inside parentheses. Or here we got the negation of a false is true and a false. Okay? So now inside this parentheses, the conjunction true and true has truth value true. Bring down the disjunction. Inside these parentheses, true and false is a false statement because it's a conjunction. It's only true when both are true. And finally, we have a disjunction with one statement true, one statement false. So the disjunction is actually true, right? Disjunction is only false when both are false. So after doing all of our operations, we end up with the truth value of true. So that entire statement is true. All right, very good. This concludes all the problems from section 3.3. This is your math teacher, Dr. Swears. I hope you found this video helpful. If you still have more questions on any of these problems, please send me an email through the inbox in the Canvas course through the FGCU portal. Again, thank you for watching these videos. I hope you found them helpful.